Last to last week, we read something of from Shear Window's early writings, where he describes the ship on which we must travel through the ocean of life if we have to arrive at the goal of integral yoga. He compares the ship to Brahma Vidya and the steering wheel as faith as the steering wheel, self-surrender as the compass, and the motive power that drives the ship across the sea as the one infinite divine Shakti. Each of these components becomes a necessary limb of the yoga. Brahma Vidya, of course, just as a ship has an outer component and an inner one, and both are important. Outer component of a ship is what we see, and the inner component is the dynamics on which it is built. So also Brahma Vidya has an outer Shastra, but this outer Shastra has to be seen in the light of a growing inner experience, because the outer Shastra is derived from an inner truth, and both are necessary, otherwise the ship can be built in every way with all the correct dimensions and yet it may not float. There is a interesting story from I think it is Greek mythology, where there are these two brothers, Icarus and Daedalus, just like our Jatayu and Sampati, and one of them wants to fly to the sun. So the only model that is available is the birds. The birds fly. This is the first flight actually. The first flight is not Oliver Wright, and it's much later. He had the will to fly. So the elder brother tells the younger, don't do this, it's dangerous, it's risky. He says, no, why not? So he makes wings of wax and ties them through, all kinds of things, and he actually picks up the feathers and attaches them, and he feels that if I run and start flapping it just like a bird does, I should be able to fly. And as the story goes, that he actually ran along a cliff and he jumped across the cliff and started flapping. The result was obvious. The first flight that never took off, but of course it presages the way to many flights to come. So in a sense, though the story is interpreted in several ways, nobody knows whether this is a true story or not. People pass it on to the realm of mythology. But one direct lesson is that it's not enough just to know the outer things. It's important to know the inner dynamics that work. So also with the Shastra, Shear Window repeatedly says the Brahma Vidya is not just an external Shastra, which is important. That is important. You can't build the ship any which way and expect it to just work with the sea. There is a way. So there is an outer Shastra. And there is an inner dynamics which impel the Shastra. For instance, when it is said that one must obey or listen to the master, it is not just an external ritual. There is a truth behind it. Because the master knows more than us. Very simple. And when we obey, our mind begins to open to that light. And later on, our inner experience justifies why exactly the master has said what he has said, which we may not understand in the beginning. But if we really obey, take that as a principle and walk on the path, that also we read last time, Shear Window reminding us that what is the way this Brahma Vidya has to be received. Then slowly the inner experience begins to grow and one understands. So this is the ship. The ship is the Brahma Vidya, which means the outer Shastra and the inner revelation along the lines of the Shastra which grows. So just as a ship takes time to build, the inner ship, its inner dynamics take time to reveal themselves. The second he says, steering wheel must be faith, not doubt. And if faith is the steering wheel, then we move. Sometimes even if we seem to move on to wrong lands, we will eventually steer ourselves through. And Shear Window reveals in several letters what is this faith that is demanded of us. It's not a faith which is just a mere superstition. He says there is a triple faith which is demanded of everyone who walks the path. Faith that if one has been called to the path, one is being carried. And whatever be the difficulties of the nature, if one cleaves to it, one will arrive. Faith that there is a divine and this world is not just a blind governance. So if we can carry this faith that there is a divine behind this world and that he has called me to the path, otherwise the call would not come. It's not that by some greatness of my own I have the call for the yoga. Nobody can, to imagine that is to land oneself in the worst of follies. And third, since I have been called to the path, whatever be the difficulties, he will carry me through. So as long as this is the steering wheel, then we will move on this ocean. The third thing which he says is that the compass which always points the direction is self-surrender. And the fourth is the motive force. Now motive force, that means motive force being the infinite divine Shakti, that should impel the ship. Not desire, not our own opinions, our beliefs and non-beliefs, but something much deeper should impel. And there Shear Window reveals to us subsequently that because to start with our motives are mixed, so all kinds of things happen, all kinds of dangers as we move along the path. So when the motive force is desire, then as soon as the divine Shakti begins to push it, there is the heightening of the egoism, which is a paradoxical thing. One is supposed to renounce the ego, but the ego begins to become more and more heightened. Oh, I am the instrument of God, I am the chosen one, I am an elitist club, I am someone very special, and all these can crash land the sadhana completely, because besides desire throws a lot of smoke in the air. It not only pollutes our personal environment, it pollutes the whole journey as one moves. The second thing which he says, if tamo guna is there, prominent in the nature, then again when the divine Shakti pushes it, then another kind of problems may appear, resistance may arise, thoughts that I am no good, I am useless, I am incapable. What can the divine really do with me? And Shear Window says, as if the divine's capacity was limited by the temporary limitation of the instrument, and then he reminds us as if the phrase mukam karoti vachalam were not true. He can really make the dumb speak, and the deaf hear, and the lame walk, and cross over the hills and mountains that stand in the way. So this is the second problem. If there is Rajoguna, then the egoism of the instrument. And if there is Tamoguna, then there is another kind of resistance which comes up, and that tends to obstruct the journey. The journey is not smooth, just as we mix petrol and gas. This problem we face all the time. There are cars which are converted onto gas, and if you don't switch it rightly, if you don't empty one and mix the other one, suddenly the car doesn't move, or it moves with fits and starts. I experience it all the time and have to keep on reminding myself and reminding that in inner life a similar principle applies, that we must allow one to be emptied and then the other takes over. Or let the higher force, the divine Shakti, the mother's grace, drive this imperfection away. Then there is another kind of mixture which can arise, and that mixture is the mixture of Sattva-guna. So if Sattva-guna is prominent, then we want that the divine should act according to my ideas of what divinity should or should not do. So if the things are not as per my ideas of yoga, whether in individual or collective life, if things are not according to my opinions and standards which I have fixed for the divine, so if it doesn't happen according to that, then either there is no divine or there is some problem somewhere. We seldom begin to think that probably divine is playing this game because I must leave my robe of virtue which I am clinging to. There is a very nice little aphorism of Shear Window where he says, when he plugged at my robe of vice, I let it go easily. It's very easy to leave the robe of vice because you feel like a very nice saintly person. But it's far more difficult to get rid of the robe of virtue. And that's the whole story of the gopis and Krishna. When Krishna is plucking and says, you come out just as you are. No. That is a good robe. I don't want to let go of it. So to not only let go the robe of vice, which is relatively easier in the sense at least we are willing to get rid of it, but to get rid of the robe of virtue and virtuosity to be regarded good in people's eyes. This is the problem of this robe. That people have an idea of what yoga is and what it is not, what it means to do sadhana and what a sadhak should look like. Even things go to this extent that people want what a sadhak should wear like. So if a sadhak is not wearing what he should be, he's expected to wear. There is a nice passage in the synthesis in the chapter on renunciation. So Shear Window says that how things can be hidden in the garb of the dress. And he says that we unconsciously put on the dress which is approved by people around us. It's a very unconscious movement. So if people will appreciate a certain dress, we put it. Now if we are in some other place, we put it, because it looks nice. Now in a place where, one is expected to live in a certain way, one puts on the garb which automatically raises one in the eyes of others. And Shear Window reminds us that this show and sham is very dangerous in yogic life because it's a kind of duplicity. And this is not just about the external garb, but all kinds of garbs that we wear, all things in the external nature. So that is why these things come as a mixture when this journey moves. Of course, our normal journey is impelled, our ship is the ship of worldly wisdom, which is being broken aside. Shear Window has 100 years back, almost 100 years back, he has told us and he has reminded us, nor let worldly prudence whisper too closely into thy ears, for it is the hour of the unexpected. So worldly prudence, our ship, normal ship is not built by Brahma Vidya. In Savitri there is a very beautiful little line, our fragile ship conveys through the sea of years an incognito of the imperishable. There is only one tiny little person who is knower of Brahman or capable of knowing Brahman, who is seated inside the ship, and he is also not respected. He is incognito. If somewhere to ask him, do you have a passport and visa, he will say, I don't have. By mistake I am here. He describes him as supernumerary on earth stage. 12th man of cricket. This is the psychic being. He is the only person. But the ship itself is not of Brahma Vidya but world Vidya. So we think that this is one kind of science, but when it comes to dealings with the world, we must put our practical mind. Divine does not know what are the ways of the world. After all, he is divine, very nice, pure, he is sitting in his chamber. What does he know of medicine? What does he know about legal issues? What does he know about politics and administration? He is comfortable in his room, let him be there, we will worship him. But Shear Window reminds us that is not the full Brahma Vidya. Integral divine or integral Brahman is where the knowledge of the higher not only unites or runs parallel, but fulfills and transforms the knowledge of the lower. And in synthesis it goes at great length that if we don't lead our life and vocation or work that we are doing from that higher light, then we will end up doing the works of a greater light in an obscure to light. Because if I continue to say that, that is all right, very fine, that's all high stuff, I know this much, I must act according to this. But yes, the divine is there, in principle I agree, and I will offer all my actions to the divine. That's not enough, because Brahman includes both. And that is the sense in the ancient ages when Brahma Vidya was not, it was not considered that you are mad if you talk about things like Brahma Vidya. During those days, the rishis knew not only about the science of Brahman, as we understand, but from that Brahma Vidya, they could derive all other Vidyas. So, Vasishtha was an able administration in the court of King Janaka. Janaka himself was a yogin. And Vishwamitra knew all the science and art of archery and all the weaponry. Rishi Agastya gave celestial weapons to Rama. So, all kinds of Vidyas, including the most mundane, can be derived from Brahma Vidya. And that is why in the ancient scriptures it is known as that knowing which all else can be known. Nalnida has written a very beautiful story on this from Sanat Sujatya, which we read sometimes, those 4 aids, where he speaks of Narada going through all kinds of depression, and he had mastered 64 Vidyas and yet he is depressed. So finally he goes to all kinds of people and they give him all kinds of advice, from get married, get a good job and all kinds of things, till finally he meets Sanat Kumar. And he asks him one question that, yes, I know you know a lot of things, but do you know that having known which all else can be known. Yasmin Vigyati Vigyati Sarvam. So that is the Brahma Vidya which encompasses all world knowledge within itself, because all this world is an emanation and a manifestation of Brahman. In one of the powerful passages, Aurobindo says, is it possible really to know rose without knowing God? Is it possible to know anything without knowing God? Actually, it is not possible. Science is baffled by this, why things are the way they are. And one has to know that which is at its root, to know that which is its branches and flowers and petals and all the details of the tree. That's why the Ashwath tree is described as hanging downwards. So our ship has to be rebuilt, not the ship of worldly knowledge and the knowledge as we understand, but the worldly knowledge itself needs to be changed along another line, along the lines of Brahma Vidya. Otherwise the division will remain. So continuing from there, we continue a little more from Shear Window's writings. The last thing he says is, of course, self-surrender and the infinite Shakti pushing it. So self-surrender is not easy. The first process of the yoga is to make the sankalpa of Atma Samarpan. At least this will that I really put myself in your hands. Put yourself with all your heart and all your strength into God's hands. This strength may count for nothing. It may be the strength of a squirrel, but yet it must be put in God's hands. Make no conditions. Ask for nothing. Not even for siddhi in the yoga. So this is the extent to which surrender should go. And Aurobindo reminds us of the example of the person who was a bhakta and who was told that 1,000 lives it will take before you see Hari. He says, oh, at least I will see it. Aurobindo says, instead of saying, I have not seen him so far, that means I will never see him. Rather you should say, so what if I have not seen him so far? It doesn't mean that I am not going to see him in the years to come. When the time comes, he will reveal himself to me. So he says, make no conditions. Ask for nothing. Not even for siddhi in the yoga. It's only yoga only because this is the will of the divine and that must be fulfilled. It doesn't matter whether individually, personally, collectively, this group, that group. Nothing matters but his will in the world. For nothing at all except that in you and through you, his will may be directly performed. And what that will is, we leave it to him. To those who demand from him, God gives what they demand. So it's a good strategy. But Aurobindo says, don't do it as a strategy. It's a very good, it's the most logical and the most wisest thing to do. So he says, to those who demand from him, God gives what they demand. Of course, sometimes he may not. But that is not revealing us. But to those who give themselves and demand nothing, he gives everything that they might otherwise have asked or needed. And in addition, he gives himself and the spontaneous boons of his love. So, as a wisdom, strategy, most practical thing in life, because people often say this is all nice spiritual stuff, high-fi things. Practically what we should do, this is the most practical wisdom, that if we give ourselves unconditionally, then he knows better what I need and he will give me all that is necessary. There is a little story of a little girl. When everybody went to, the story goes, to cut it long story short, that God called, there were people whom he had called in his chamber, and to everyone he handed over a gift. And it was wrapped in a very beautiful wrapper. Now, obviously he wanted that people should open it and see the gift. But the wrapper was so beautiful that they would not open. So he came up and suddenly he saw one little child is beginning to open. So God goes and tears off this wrapper. And everybody has tears in his eyes. And this girl is beaming with joy. So she says, he has given the gift, he knows. If he is tearing off the wrapper, that is what is necessary. So this is the kind of surrender that one should have. That he gives whatever is necessary and he gives much more. And the greatest of all boons, which he says, is the spontaneous boons of his love. The next process is to stand back and watch the working of the divine power in yourself. This standing back is a necessary part so that we can see that we are not driven. Of course, one will be driven, but one part sees that one is being driven right now by tamoguna. In Savitri, there is a very beautiful description of these three forces which come from nature, and of course, their higher parts also in the triple soul forces. So one is driven by tamoguna and one says, oh, I am no good, useless, so many years, what sadhana I can do? I cannot even have little control over my tongue. But all these are suggestions. The mother says these are suggestions coming from censors, the adverse forces. Originally they were meant to be instrument of sincerity, but they have forgotten the great grace which stands behind all things. So all thoughts of doubt, incapacity, resistance, revolt, one must observe and then push them aside. This working is often attended with disturbance and trouble in the system. So yoga is not a smooth process. The moment we begin to hand over our fragile ship in the hands of divine, he starts working on it. So some parts he picks up and throws aside, other one he uses, third one he puts it in the furnace so that it can turn into real steel, fourth one he begins to chisel. So it is attended with a lot of disturbance in the system. Therefore, faith is necessary. It's not enough just to have faith in the beginning. It's very easy to have faith in the beginning because one has a very rosy idea of things. But as one goes through the journey of transformation, which Aurobindo has never hidden that it is a difficult journey. He says, in fact, it can be dangerous if you misconduct yourself. Misconduct in the sense that if you don't fulfill these basic conditions of surrender, of faith, then it can really become dangerous. So he says, therefore faith is necessary, though perfect faith is not always possible at once. For whatever impurity is in you, harbored openly or secretly lurking, is likely to rise at first and be repeated so long as it is not exhaustively swept out. So when the divine decides to clean up the floor, he doesn't use vacuum cleaner. He gets on to scrubbing it. First he uses, of course, vacuum cleaner, then we are fine. Vacuum cleaner is easy. Then he takes a broom and starts sweeping it. But broom also doesn't sweep. Then he starts scrubbing it. Now, we keep telling, please, when will you stop? It is clean enough. We want to sit in that room and do meditation. But he says, nothing doing. It must be scrubbed thoroughly. And that explains many things in us and in everyone. And we don't understand. But this is the inevitable process of yoga. If we really understand its process, then there is nothing to feel bad about it. One has to just go through this process of purification. And which is the greatest impurity? Of course, the most dangerous is fear. And here, Aurobindo is telling us which is the greatest impurity. Whatever impurity is in you, harbored openly or secretly lurking, is likely to rise at first and be repeated so long as it is not exhaustively swept out. And doubt in this age is an almost universal impurity. So what impurities? Doubt and fear. These are the two greatest impurity in human nature. What will happen to me? I have apparently left things and taken this dangerous turn. Will the divine really lead me? Or doubt. In fact, they are very close kin of each other. That's why they say that, doubt and fear. Doubt is in the mind and fear is in the vital. Fear comes because of a mistrust, which essentially is doubt. So doubt and distrust, Aurobindo says in one of his aphorisms, are the two watchmen who will not let us enter the kingdom of God. They are very solid watchmen. So every time we want to enter and say, I have had a call. So doubt will say, what kind of call? No, I feel so beautiful inside, when I look at mother. Oh, that is just hallucination. That is all religion. Have you seen mother? Then you wonder whether you have seen or not. So he says, go back. This is the wrong gate. After some time he changes the mask. And he'll again ask us, yes sir, where do you want? Oh, kingdom of God. What is there? Oh, we are told that, there is bliss, delight and love and peace. Have you ever experienced? Have you seen anybody? Look, go around. See all the people who are beelining to this kingdom of God. Nobody is having peace. You are in the wrong queue. See in this queue, take a poll. you will not find a single person living in peace and bliss. Oh, maybe I am in the wrong queue. So again, one goes back. So doubt and distrust keep on sending us back, and we are so fools that we easily, come under their sway. So Shear Window is cautioning us, and doubt in this age is an almost universal impurity. But even when doubt assails, what should we do? Stand by and wait for it to pass. Availing yourself, if possible, of the satsang of those who are already advanced on the path. Of course, the best satsang is not people, because people create all kinds of confusion. The best satsang is Shear Window and the Mother's works. So satsang has this great power of uplifting us. And I suppose that is the only logic to, get together and read something from Mother and Shear Window. Is because this is an uplifting thing. The avail of the satsang, whenever doubt assails, Shear Window is telling us, stand back and wait for it to pass. It is like any wave of Prakriti, it will come and go. One day we feel doubt, next day we are again filled with trust. And vice versa more commonly. Availing yourself, if possible, of the satsang of those who are already on the path. But when that is absent, still holding fast to the principle of the yoga. What is the core principle of yoga? Shear Window is revealing to us. Holding fast to the principle of the yoga, self-surrender. And what is this self-surrender? When distressed within or assailed from without, remember the words of the Gita. By giving thyself up in heart and mind to me, thou shalt cross over all difficulties and perils by my grace. Abandon all dharmas, all law, rule, means, and codes of every kind, whether formed by previous habit and belief or imposed from outside. But what do we do after abandoning it? This part is very easy, because we are only waiting to become lawless. Abandon all dharmas and take refuge in me alone. I will deliver thee from all sin and evil. Do not grieve. I will deliver. You have not to be troubled or struggle yourself as if the responsibility were yours. It is not our problem, first of all. He has called us, and He knows much more. He is much more responsible. Even a noble human being does not abandon someone who has come and taken shelter. Even a noble human being. Definitely He is infinite times more than us. And if we have taken refuge in Him, it is an inner process. It has nothing to do with outside. If we have taken refuge in Him and put ourselves in His hand, then He will never abandon us. Name pranashyati of the Gita. As if the responsibility were yours or the result dependent on your efforts. A mightier than you is busy with the matter. So He knows what He is doing. Neither disease nor calamity, nor the rising of sin and impurity in you should cause any alarm. So He is again and again reminding us, these things will arise. When we turn to yoga, we start with a very beautiful idea of ourselves. Everybody is bad except me. That is the beginning. Or some people are good, some people are bad, but I am definitely among the side of the good. But slowly the masks are ripped off. And as He has said, things which are concealed, they begin to rise. All impurities. But He is saying we have not to be alarmed even when sin and impurity rise. It does not mean we start indulging and say, oh, very good, He has told us. It means not to be alarmed, to hold on with faith, to observe them, and to take refuge in the core principle of self-surrender. Hold fast only to Him. What it means to hold fast? I will deliver thee from all sin and evil. But the release does not come by a sudden miracle. It comes by a process of purification. And these things are a part of the process. So this process of change is a long process. because the whole system has to be emptied of the old fuel of desire, and then this new Shakti can act in us and impel it, and our life will become a very breath and an act of God. As he says in one of his aphorisms, be like a leaf driven by the breath of God, like a leaf is driven in the tempest. And then he says, what kind of action is this? That. He says, he compares it to the delight in all kinds of works. He speaks of the sword and the arrow and the earth whirling around the suns. And he says, the sword did not ask to be made, nor it resists when it is being used, nor does it lament when it is broken and put aside. There is a joy of being made, a joy of being used, and a joy of being broken, and a joy of being put aside. That equal joy discover. So here he is telling us that this is part of the process. They are like the dust that rises in clouds when a room long uncleaned is at last swept out. Though the dust seem to choke you, yet persevere. So this is the ship of Brahma Vidya in which Aurobindo is asking us to travel in 1912. This writing is 1912. But of course, knowing that we are what we are, he has, or rather the mother has built a yet simpler ship for us. She does not want us to take the trouble of building a ship of Brahma Vidya, the Shastra and other things. And this is not just an allegorical thing or holy sentiment. What else is her description of 3rd February 1957? Where she 58, where she describes of the supramental ship in which she is carrying everyone from this side to the other side. People who are ready and people who are not ready. She takes them to and fro, and they are tested, and some are ready, some are sent back, some are partly ready. She has done that. She has built the ship, and all that she asks, what are the conditions to sit in that ship? 2 things, transparency and plasticity. She hints at it very interestingly. She says, the people who were sitting in that ship, what was the deciding criteria that they were being taken to the other side? She says, very interestingly, the criteria was not moral at all, but psychological. It was not based on how many good deeds you have committed and how virtuous you are. That was not the criteria. Criteria was, she says, the beings on that ship cast no shadows. They were transparent. They were, and that's what Mother has used the word sincerity. To be just as you are, inside and outside. And to offer it in front of the divine, to be just transparent, like an open book. And the second thing she says, in that ship, there was nothing artificial. Of course, transparency means by its very nature, no hypocrisy and duplicity. But the second thing she says, very interesting. On that ship, it was the will that governed everything. When one wanted to have a dress, one had a dress. When one wanted it to move in a certain way, it moved in a certain way. Which means plasticity, an entire plasticity to God's will. So if there is plasticity and transparency, in one word, complete openness to her, then we are carried in this ship built by the mother, which is far more easier than building a ship of Brahma Vidya for us. And that is what she has built for us. Let's end with a little poem of Shear Window, but before that, the mother reminds us, she says, that is what has been meant when it has been taught. Certain prophets in the past have had this apocalyptic vision, but as usual, things were mixed. And what was the vision? Their vision of the supramental world, which will come to raise up the part of humanity which consents and to transform this physical world. So they have had this vision of a new world which will come and lift up humanity, which is consenting to be changed. So, to give hope to those who have been born into it, into this perverted part of human consciousness, this ship that we so much clung to and hug with, so much cherish it, perverted part of human consciousness, they have taught redemption through faith. Those who have faith in the sacrifice of the divine in matter will be automatically saved by faith alone, without understanding, without intelligence. They have not seen the supramental world, nor that the great sacrifice of the divine in matter is the sacrifice of involution, which must culminate in the total revelation of the divine in matter itself. They just have this faith, and that is enough to carry them through. So we are entering the week close to Mother's birthday. So next week we won't have the Tuesday, I hate to say it a class, but sharing and reading from Shear Window, because we'll have Savitri classes in beach office. But next week we will have it again. So just before that, this is a poem written by Shear Window to R on her birthday. Again, written nearly 100 years back. This poem is dated somewhere around 1910. It's between 1909 to 1912, and just a few lines from that, and then we will close. Its mood is the same of traveling in the ship. The one thing which he has added in this poem is that in this ship, we have not been told who is the captain of the ship. So our normal ship has ego as the captain, and of course the Brahma Vidya ship should be driven only by the divine as captain. So here he is bringing that factor of the pilot and the captain. We too by the eternal might are led to whatsoever goal he wills. It is the same mood. He is carrying us to whatsoever goal he wills. Let us not fix the goal and the time. Our hem he grasps, our generous sail outspread. His strong breath fills. He fills the sail and carries it by his breath. What should be our attitude? Rejoice and fear not for the waves that swell, the storms that thunder, winds that sweep. Always our captain holds the rudder well. He does not sleep. We sleep. Very often, because he does not sleep, we sleep with lot of worries and anxiety. We wake up fresh because he does not sleep. When we are asleep, he is working. He is constantly doing the work of cleaning. We know how mother once remarked when on the balcony she was cleaning the droppings of a bird, and someone said, "Oh mother, I'll do it." She said, "What is this, my child? Don't you know what cleaning I have to do inside the human consciousness?" So here he is telling us, rejoice and fear not for the waves that swell, the storms that thunder, winds that sweep. We should not worry what will happen. Even if the ship sinks, he'll build another one. We should not worry. Always our captain holds the rudder well. He does not sleep. If in the trough of the enormous sea thou canst not find the sky for spray, fear never, for our sun is there with thee by night and day. Like Matri Mandir, clouds come and go, but the ray of light is always there. Something keeps moving in that direction. So clouds will come and go, but the sun does not disappear. They'll come and pass away. Clouds of doubt, clouds of depression. So sometime when you are in the sea and you don't see the sky, don't worry, our sun is there with thee by night and day. And then he's taking us still further. Even those who sink in the victorious flood, where do they sink? He who to some gives victory, joy and good, to some gives rest. So he says, where do they sink? Into his breast. Even those who sink in the victorious flood, where do they sink? Into his breast. He who to some gives victory, joy and good, to some gives rest. Confident of his grace, expect his will. Let him lead, though hidden be the bone. See him in all that happens, that fulfill for which thou wert born. The passage is from the same Yoga and its Objects.